If pain has ever made you question whether or not you should keep training, you're not alone, and here's what you need to know. All the research that we have indicating as to when is somebody most likely to get injured or have pain with training, it's when they start something new. And so what you need to know it's relatively common to experience some degree of aches, pain, or injury when you get started. Now, that doesn't mean that this should be ignored, but it should take a little burden and the guilt off of feeling pain or getting injured. Too often, when somebody experiences pain or an injury with a new training program, they interpret that as being that it's just not right for them and they can't do it and they need to stop training completely. And what we tell many of our clients is it's not an indication that you need to stop training, right? It's more of an indication that it's not a roadblock, but instead we need to take a detour and find a different way to get to our destination. If somebody completely discontinues training when they experience some sort of pain or injury, what can happen is there's a deconditioning effect that happens. So we lose some strength, we lose some range of motion, we lose some endurance, and simultaneously our confidence decreases. And all these things combined are actually going to increase your chances of experiencing the same thing the next time that you try to get back into training. So the alternative solution is to take the detour that I was alluding to. And that detour essentially is going to be looking at, well, why did this program result in that sort of injury or pain? And a lot of times when we look at it, it tends to be for some particular characteristic of this individual, their body just did not have tolerance to the stressors that was being applied during that training program. And so instead, we take a step back, we zoom out, and we say, well, how can we modify this training program to meet the client where they're at, and then build them up to be able to tolerate that program while respecting the healing process that needs to happen with whatever injury or pain they may have. When we take this detour and follow that path, what we'll find is that even in the context of injury or pain, we're addressing the injury and the pain to make sure that we truly resolve it so that it's not a factor in the future, but we're still working on strength, we're still working on range of motion, we're still working on endurance, and at the same time, psychologically, the confidence is getting there that we can continue no matter what kind of barriers or impediments may arise as we continue down the path towards our goals. And maybe you've been dealing with pain and you're somebody who thinks, hey, I can't get to training because first I need to eliminate this pain before I can consider doing any form of training or fitness. I need to first go to a physical therapist who's going to give me these particularly special exercises and then eventually get to training. Or I need to go to this chiropractor and get all these adjustments and stuff like that and then go to training. But instead, I'd encourage you to reframe that where those things should be in conjunction with the training program if you actually want to get the optimal results, both from a physical health perspective and from an injury and rehab perspective. An example of this would be a client that I had that had reoccurring lower back pain with any sort of like picking objects off the ground type task. And this is important for him because this particular individual had a job that often required them picking things up from the ground. And they'd have these recurring back pain flare-ups, and they were told by every single provider that essentially to avoid training legs, to not do any sort of deadlifts or squats, because this has a chance at re-aggravating their lower back pain. Actually, I was in agreement with that essentially when I assessed this individual, they weren't ready to do that kind of training. But the question became, how do we get their body to the point where they can tolerate it, because their day-to-day activities required that they be able to do that task without the risk of re-aggravating. So we looked at, well, what are the components of the deadlift, the squat, and the lunge, and those kinds of things that this person at this time cannot tolerate, and how do we build tolerance? So we broke down those movements into component movements and then built their strength up in those different components of the movement, eventually building tolerance to those compound movements, the squat, the deadlift, and the lunge. And then once we had an entry point into those movements, we started to build them up slowly. And I can happily say that a little while afterwards, this person is deadlifting, squatting, and lunging without any sort of pain. They're confident again, and they haven't had a back pain flare up for years at this point. So hopefully what you can see is that there's a lot of value in reframing the situation or the question of, do I stop training when I have pain, to how do I keep training when I have pain, right? And that's oftentimes require the help of a professional. So I'd highly encourage you to reach out to a physical therapist, chiropractor, or a personal trainer who's got a good background in this stuff that can meet you where you're at. But again, the pain and the injury is often an indication not to completely stop training whatsoever, because there's negative consequences of doing so. Instead, to figure out, well, what does my detour look like to make sure that I can keep training, keep moving forward, address the injury, and get to the destination and the goals that I hope to get to.